You press record.
Recording. It's recording. So everything you say now will be taken down, used in evidence against you.
Indeed.
And don't say underpants.
Equally, you don't have to say anything, is how that speech begins.
So, Bush, I wrote an article in 1989. I think. Yes, it was in 1989 about the Manchester Fringe. I don't know if you were running the green room at that point. I don't think you were.
No, that was the year I arrived in Manchester and started work at the green room.
Yeah.
The green room happened afterwards.
January the 1st, 1990 was when I started.
Right.
Yeah.
The green room started in 1987, in June 1987, according to my article. That was the opening production, which was done by, I think, you, Rikki, and
Lee Beagley.
In collaboration with Caboodle.
Well, it was called Fusion Caboodle, and it was called Scat, and it was very badly conceived. And the reason it was so badly conceived was because of the relationship between Caboodle and Fusion and how it had emerged. There is a whole history attached to how that fusion came about.
Well, let's go back on that, because the point we got to last time was that there's a company called, see my notes, No Alternative.
That's right, yeah.
And they did a production of
Decadence. They did a production of Stephen Berkoff's Decadence, and that was a guy called George Uzel and Denise Evans.
And did he do the one-man Hamlet? Didn't he do the one-man Hamlet at one time?
Apparently he did, in Brighton. I don't think it was a one-man Hamlet, but I think it was virtually a one-man Hamlet, despite the fact that it had
maybe a little bit just for plot.
Yeah. It was so what essentially happened out of the two companies, Theatre Total, which was the company I started with Rivca, and No Alternative, was we fused primarily because of the Berkoff connection and interest, and we became Fusion. And Theatre Total already had Arts Council funding from Northwest Arts, from a really visually led, Artaud-inspired show, which Rivca and I did, and we performed in. This was before movie, right? And
wasn't this a Berkoff script that you produced?
Yes, exactly. It was a Stephen Berkoff script. It was the
Fall of the House of Usher.
That's right. It was his adaptation of the Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah.
And I was into Butoh at that time, and I was also exploring contact improvisation dance. So I used to go to Dartington in the summer schools, and I had studied with Steve Paxton. And that really influenced how I started to think about things, and I connected it up with the Butoh ideas. And also because my degree was in visual arts and theatre, I was interested in the link between the two things. That was the inspiration for the Usher show, which I did with Rivca, and I was also into. So I started to get into Grotowski, and Rivca was already exploring all of this stuff through Public Spirit. And so when we connected up with George and Denise, they were, as far as I was concerned at the time, more grounded in dealing with words and with text, whereas I was a lot more visual and not particularly interested in text, actually. Or I was interested in smashing up the idea of language. And so we fused, and the rehearsals were really explosive because they were into meaning through language, and I was just exploring shit from a visual arts perspective with Rivca, who was a dancer. And so the result was actually something interesting and explosive, and the Arts Council gave us some funding. I can't remember how much. The first time around, I think we got about £6,000, and we took the show up to the Edinburgh Festival, and then we applied for more funding, and we got some more money and organised a tour. Meanwhile, I was teaching at Cruenal Sager, and whilst I was teaching there, I met Lee Beagley. And Lee Beagley was a force in his own right, and he liked the stuff I was doing, and so we were at a stage where financially we were in kind of, we'd had some grants, and I was having to teach at the same time in order to pay the rent, and so financially things determined how we moved. Caboodle also had some funding at the time, so it made sense that what was fusion fused with Caboodle, because it meant that we had a rehearsal space, we were attached to the college, and financially it made more sense that we would get more funding. So in some respects it was an artistic and a strategic move. And so we did that. George went off on his own because he was obsessed with Stephen Burkoff, and I'd had enough of Stephen Burkoff at that stage. I was thinking, okay, I've learned stuff from this, but how do I move forward? And Lee was a very persuasive and driven man. And so him and I got on pretty well, and we started working on the show. What did we do? Oh yes, we did Rasputin the Forbidden Story, which was a devised show, and the rehearsals were really fucking stressful. It's really stressful working with Lee. He was older than me, and I looked up to him.
Yeah,
but I was also a vision.
He's a very forceful personality, isn't he?
He was very forceful, and I clashed with him sometimes, but I'm not forceful in the way he is, and I never have been. I would say that my sensibilities lay in the visual arts, in what you can do without language, in a way. And he was, firstly, he was driven as a performer, which I was as well, but not in the same way or to the same degree. I would say it was the difference between someone who is driven coming from an intellectually university perspective that deals with language's meaning, i.e. the written word, whereas I was interested in that, but was had come from a visual arts background. In the background, you can see an abstract work I did a few years ago. I was into painting and was into Jackson Pollock and was into the irrational self, therefore got led into Butoh and was into dance through mark making, if you like, and language through mark making, whereas those who went on literary degrees were taught about language and the meaning of the written word and what did the writer mean and how do you structure a well-made story. Whereas I came from somewhere else but was sort of learning about that at the same time. I was open to it. But if I was honest, looking at it now, I felt crushed by the importance of history and the importance of meaning and whose is the story? What does this mean? Whereas I was about, well, it's up for grabs. It depends on who tells the fucking story. and how you tell the story and how you get in touch with your sensibilities. But I wasn't really as aware of how I was doing that as I am now. Okay? And
there was then another company that came out of this called Foundation.
Yes. Foundation was Rivca and I trying to find a way through what the thinking was then. So looking at it as I analyze it now, I see it as there was the people who were into the written word and the so-called well-made script. And there were the experimentalists who were into Grotowski and Artaud and all of that sort of shit. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the difference between, for example, the thinking that was happening if you went to Dartington and if you went to Manchester University. Yeah. Now, I wanted to go to Dartington, but I didn't go there because at the time it wasn't a degree course. So I chose to do a Manchester University degree in photography and drama.
Yeah.
Right? Because I thought if I did that, I would then go on to film school. But something happened in between. Eventually, I did go to film school, actually, a long time afterwards.
Yeah.
But I was more akin to what was happening, for example, if you went to Dartington, but I got sucked into the literary thinking because of an accidental journey and because I started to get offered a lot of freelance stuff and I went into teaching, theatre, so-called.
And I did go to Dartington.
I know you did, Bush. I know you went to Dartington. I understand that. And I knew that a long time, and I used to work with quite a few people who went to Dartington, actually, eventually. But I went on my own route and had kids, and I went into teaching because I had to support my fucking kids, basically. It was that's a whole other story.
Rikki, you said something about the gatekeepers. Bush arrived.
Yes.
What I was going to ask you what you meant by that.
What I mean is I still work in theatre and I worked in film, and on my journey I have constantly come up against walls which will not let you into their space. And I've talked with quite a few people about this, and it's to do with what started happening when you had reached a particular level of experimental work or touring, which I did for 7 years with a whole load of different people, including Welfare State International, who I went on to work with. And all of those people started to talk about how you sustain your funding and how you maintain your work. Because as independent companies, if you didn't get consistent funding, you had to find a way of surviving. And what I saw happening is some people went into what I would refer to as the establishment and went into supposedly safer jobs, into academia. And I did that for a while, but I couldn't stand it, quite frankly. Or you went and worked for larger companies who seemed to have sustainable funding. So I interviewed for a directing job for Welfare State International, and I went to work with them, which was a whole other journey. What people who I know talk about quite a lot is they talk about how you had to jump through hoops in order to survive with your work. And when you had struggled, as a lot of us did in the early stages, I mean, I had like 3 jobs at the time. I used to work at the Royal Northern College of Music, constructing sets, a whole load of other things. Everyone had to do these things, okay? But you were constantly in the background trying to sustain your artistic work and experimentation and vision, while you look for ways of sustaining yourself as a human being. And there are examples where eventually Caboodle Fusion were
their venues. Okay, something about their venues. Bush, can I bring you
okay.
in?
Tell us about being a gatekeeper.
Yeah, God. Where do you begin?
Who did you put on in your venue, and why? Why did you make that particular choice?
Hear me? Hello,
Why did you make these choices?
Yeah. Why did I make the choices? And yeah, that's a good question, Camden. I think I never had it. First thing to say is I never had it in my mind to become a gatekeeper. It wasn't on my trajectory at all. I arrived at the green room to be the community liaison person, which on a kind of part-time contract, which I found really interesting, exciting. I had some stability because, like Rikki, I had now a new child and couldn't continue to juggle in the way that Rikki's described. And then Stella left. And she did say to me before she left, she said, do you want to take this over? And I was like, well, no, not really. And I said, well, why me? And she said, well, I think that, you know, the spirit of the place would be safe with you. And I went, well, no, I'm not really, because I'd seen Stella, you know, 4'6", standing up to 6'2" black men at the door, you know, telling them they couldn't come in. And I'd seen what that meant. And I thought, you know, do I really want that responsibility? Not really. So I didn't apply, and then they didn't appoint anybody. And of course, I'd seen some of the people coming in for interview. I was like, oh, thank God they're not my new boss. So when they re-advertised, I thought, oh, well, give it a go. And I got it. So then I had to figure out, well, what am I doing? And it seemed to me...
So you were completely, what you're saying is you were completely, you were not qualified for the...
No,
post that you were
No,
hired.
no. I mean, there's no way somebody like me would get a job like that today. You know, I didn't understand management. I didn't understand. I mean, I knew some of it from producing my own work, but how do you lead a team? How are you an equal opportunities employer? How do you answer all of these questions from the funding body? You know, I can't remember the kind of numbers we were dealing with, but I think just to try and answer the question, I always saw myself as a public servant, believe it or not, and that I thought it was my job to reflect the city that I lived in within a relatively narrow artistic framework. That the Green Room was perceived as a safe house for new and innovative within the performing arts. So I took that as my basic thing, and then I think as I kind of got into it, I looked at the Manchester landscape, and I thought, you know, just to go back to what you were saying, Rikki, I thought that text-based drama work had quite a lot of places it could go, whereas other theatrical expressions or the other people, you know, there was no gay village, there was no near centre.
No.
So there was a kind of representation thing going on. So quite often I'd do a season and I'd look at it with the matrix of what's the cultural diversity here? What's the balance between male and female artists? And I wouldn't change it. I'd go, okay, there's a gap there. Next time you do it, make sure you bring that into mind. So that was the basic framework. And then within that, you had to do all the financial stuff. You know, how do you make it work?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the people I really think, Camden, that you could have a really fruitful conversation with is Steve Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is the archivist of the Green Room. He's got so much stuff. He could give you the programs for all of this period you're talking about.
Yeah, he's a very good friend of mine. And yeah,
I thought he was supposed to be here this evening.
Well, he has. He has kind of hinted to that extent.
That he might come.
Let me just give you, if I may, just tell a little anecdote about Bush Hartshorn at the Green Room. I went. This was shortly. I think it might have been your first season or second season, and you know,
is this gonna hurt, Camden?
No, it's not. I knew you reasonably well. I knew you well enough to actually tell you what I thought, and you actually came up to me during the interval of I think it was Impact Theatre. No, it wasn't Impact Theatre. It was one of the Impact Theatre group, and I can't remember his name, but he'd done this piece, which was totally visual. It had very little sense to it, and it seemed to be about nothing, and it was extremely annoying. And I was just so angry, and I was like, "Why the fuck is this? Are they putting this shit on?" So I actually told you that because you asked me, and I actually expressed my anger at it, and you said, "Oh well, that's good then."
Well, I think I understand that. I understand my own
reaction.
Yeah, that you had a reaction to it.
Yeah,
which is important.
Yeah, and another thing actually I want to say is that I tried to make it not about my taste.
Yeah.
I tried to approach it intellectually. Of course, there were things that I really liked and things I wanted people to see, like Jérôme Bell, for example. I don't know if you.
Yeah, I know.
Which people said was a snore. 30 people came and left. It was a snore fest, and now he's kind of a lauded choreographer. I mean, certain things I put on because again, I couldn't do it because I liked it, because I thought it would stimulate something.
Yeah.
And, you know, a kind of, sorry, yeah.
Just to kind of update this idea of the gatekeepers, I was involved last year with a show which was half film and half theatre, and it went on tour. And at quite a big venue in Manchester, the producer, well, I was one of the co-producers and the director of the show, but the writer had put God knows how many shows on in that same theatre over the years. And there was a new artistic director of the theatre. And when we proposed that we should put the show on in that particular theatre, he said, "Oh, I don't think this will work. It's a history play and it's quite..." And he went on about he doesn't think it will sell. And we had to convince him to put the show on. And eventually he agreed on a split. And we completely sold out. And the reason he did that is because he was a new generation, new incoming individual, and he knew nothing about the history of the place or the writer, despite the fact there was shitloads of information all over the place about him. And that really, for me, was a landmark saying nothing has fucking changed, because I'd experienced that years earlier with the Caboodle situation in, it was in South Hill Park Arts Centre, where we were the resident theatre company for 2 years, and suddenly the fucking Arts Council stopped our funding. And so we couldn't, so we'd all arrived there and moved to South Hill Park, to Bracknell, which was Margaret Thatcher's favourite town or something, and was a fucking arse ends of nowhere with a really nice, expensive theatre. And suddenly the Arts Council stopped our funding. And there was a huge hoo-ha about it. And I was thinking, this is a fucking joke. I've just given up everything to move to fucking Bracknell, of all places, where I would never want to live. And suddenly the Arts Council didn't give us the funding for our next tour. And I remember thinking, I've got to stop doing this. This is ridiculous. So after a couple of years there, I applied for a job to work for Welfare State International, which was absolutely fantastic. I went off to work for them, and then they started to do the same thing. And they started thinking, we can't fulfill the criteria to keep saying that we have to work in the community in this way and we have to do that. Where's the art and the experimentation gone? Where are we experimenting with language and bringing new ideas? And they eventually stopped doing the art. And all of us, I think, actually started in these areas of work because we were at art school or drama schools or whatever, and were sold this pack of fucking lies. That's how I see it now. We were sold a pack of fucking lies and believed that we were exploring language and art, all sorts of things. And anyway, there was no correspondence between that and the reality of the marketplace. And I could talk about this in great depth because I went into teaching and I saw people who were believing all these things were happening out there in the world of art, and saw me, for example, touring with companies, and I heard people say, "Oh, you're working with great companies," but I was barely fucking surviving. It was ridiculous. And I had kids at that stage. And this is still going on, I tell you. It's still going on, and it needs to be discussed. It needs to be talked about.
Michael.
Isn't your experience in a way, Rikki, a microcosm of the arts in this country? I mean, we're hearing a lot at the moment about the depth of the theatre because of COVID-19, and it seems to me a lot of it is about keeping buildings open. But the fact is, and it doesn't really matter which political party is in government.
Yeah.
The arts in this country have always survived in spite of, not because of. In that sense, we are so totally un-European.
Yeah.
Yes, you can see if you do this, it will bring in that. That is the only. I mean, it amazes me still that, you know, we produce still dancers, writers, filmmakers, and all the crafts that go with those. Forget the actors.
But not so much. Not so much anymore.
In spite
I didn't hear the last bit that you said, Michael.
We still produce year on year dancers and writers and musicians and actors and singers and visual artists. People, despite what's happened to further education, to the whole grant system, we still produce year after year in spite of our governments.
Yep.
I mean, you can go back to, I spent about 5-6 years ago, I was touring up and down the M25 in all those art centres and civic theatres that Lee, God bless her, with her Arts for All program. 67. I mean, you know, they were still there. They have to program. And I worked with somebody who latched onto that. All right, what he took into them was not necessarily high art, but it paid and we pleased the people. And that's one definition of theatre. But what you're describing is, in a way, 'twas ever thus, really. And what I think a lot of people who are particularly vociferous on Facebook at the moment about save the theatres and save the arts don't seem to realise that it has always been this way. This is just another kick in the balls. But it has always been. There was never a golden age for the arts in this country. When you go anywhere in Europe, even the most miserable, corrupt, run, financially bankrupt, there's still an opera house in every town. You know?
Well, I think the thing I find disturbing in a way, because I taught for quite a long time. I had to teach part-time, and I've seen quite a few people who stayed in teaching or ran. Well, how I describe it is they run and hide in academia, right? And they are completely divorced from the reality of the things that not only I've done, but quite a few people have done. Huh? What'd you say?
Not like the staff at the Poly when I was there. I mean, they were training for a theatre that was already dead on it. It had collapsed in the dressing room before we even 20 years got there. I mean, Jesus, when I think about the shit.
I know. This is absolutely true.
This idea of the repertory system where you'd be playing the Arab bead seller at night and rehearsing the Jubilee in the afternoon. I mean, for fuck's sake, that hadn't existed since the 50s.
Yeah. Hang on a moment.
Can I move aside? Let's just move on. The next thing, the process of acting. That kind of follows on. I was watching an interview with Orson Welles today, and he was saying acting is just really convincing the audience of something that isn't true. That was his summation of it. That's what he thought it was. And he never actually wanted to be an actor. He just ended up becoming one, and then fell in love with, you know, all of this. But what about the process of acting? I mean, this is something that's central to theatre. I think it was something that was central at the time, because Rick was talking about the visual theatre and then, you know, the literary theatre, and the actor has to have some lines to say. But then we had performers like Rivca Rubin who never said a word.
It's because she didn't like talking.
Yeah.
Except
but she was just as good an actor as any of the rest of us, wasn't she? So,
well, she certainly got over the not liking talking.
Yeah.
Rebecca, she liked talking. I used to fucking spend a lot of time with her. I'll tell you, off stage she talked. But you see the process of acting. Okay, here's another thing I love to talk about. This is because there was an era of Theatre de Complicité and the whole Lecoq explosion. Okay, and what the drama schools did, I mean, I trained with Lecoq, okay, after I left Southall Park, I went and trained with Lecoq and with Philippe Gaulier. I was about 35 at the time, 36 or something. And what was particularly interesting is I then started to teach this stuff in drama schools. And what the drama schools did is they sucked all this thing into the drama schools and compartmentalized it and started to sell it to people. Whereas quite a lot of it had come from kind of street performers. All the Lecoq stuff was a very organic, visual, different system of training that incorporated certain things that, for example, the Stanislavski system had used and examined as well. But it was his own system. And the drama schools fucking grabbed all this shit and just started to sell it to people. So all of us lot who were running independent theatre workshops and going into drama schools and bringing it into the drama schools all ended up not being able to bloody sell it because the drama schools grabbed it and went, we'll have some of that. And they still bloody do that. And then they started to sell things like visual theatre. Oh, we do a bit of Buto, we do a bit of this, we do a bit of that. They fucking systematized it and controlled it, right? And they're still bloody doing it. Okay, they took it from us lot who were experimenting. We did all the Grotowski stuff. We were exploring all sorts of things, and they just grabbed it and went, oh, this now belongs to Central or whoever they fucking are. And I became a part of that for a while, and I then started thinking, fuck this, I'm not going to give them a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's a whole, and I could go on about this for a long time because it's still happening.
This might be pertinent, Rikki, which is the class of 78 of Dartington.
Yeah.
Got together at the beginning of lockdown.
Yeah.
There were 23 graduates and 19 showed up.
Right.
Including Steve Paxton.
Right. Okay.
And since then we've met, not 19, but we've met in good numbers every Sunday night. And there's a project coming out of it, which is we're trying to examine our learning. What because we're all surprised about where we've ended up.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're trying to take apart our learning. What was it about that system of learning that has been acknowledged as being avant-garde and not part of the time? Even as I was leaving, because I stayed to teach a couple of years, as I was leaving, it was already getting shut down. And as you say, compartmentalized. And there was something, and one of the common threads that's come out is that every individual student, we were all in the same woods called Dartington.
Yeah, I used to go there a lot, Bush.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm using that as a metaphor.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
But each individual navigated their own path through the wood. Some of us all touched the same tree. Some of us touched the same tree at the same time. Some of us never touched some of the trees. Yeah, yeah. But there was something about that system that was not compartmentalized. Yeah. That has allowed us after graduation to, and I think it's extraordinary that a group of people that haven't seen each other for 40 years got back in such numbers. Anyway, I'm wondering if we can wind it quite a long way back, actually, because we're all pretty much the same generation. I think I'm probably the eldest, although Michael's wonderful hair, we could be in the same team, Michael. It's a wig. Good choice, Michael. But I'm wondering about that interface when we left our education, you know, before you got to Fusion. How did you negotiate those really? Because that's who I'm working with now. I'm working with a generation of people who are coming out of university or college training in the dance world. And I always feel that we had I think the biggest cut to the arts in our careers was the cut to supplementary benefit.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah,
Totally.
I know exactly what you mean, because we could do, like Rikki was saying, yeah, you could do 3 jobs. But one of the reasons we could do what we did and put on the stuff that we did was because, in a way, that was state funding of the arts, in a very, if you think about it in a certain way, because you could actually, we have the time. And now I meet actors all the time. I'm about to move back into one, but I've been the property guardianship for 2.5 years with 30 people, many of whom work in the arts, and their lives are terrible because, of course, they have to sustain themselves whilst actually pursuing a career in the most expensive city in Europe. And the truth is, of course, if you're going to use the word artist, then unless you're asleep, you actually have to be thinking about that all the time, while sustaining yourself. And that is, I wouldn't be 23 again for anything.
No.
I really wouldn't, because so much more was possible 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It was close 20 years with Thatcher. There was but you could, you couldn't hire the Palladium, but you could get something on at the Green Room because you knew somebody who would access to a photocopy. You photocopied it and you fly it everywhere. And you had the time and of course, the energy. You had the time to do that, and none of that exists now.
Yeah, you could practice your practice.
Huge deposits. How anybody gets in London, it relies totally on the fact that the actors work for nothing.
Yep, and it's extremely similar here. I live in Brighton, and there's loads of artistic activity. What did you say? What did you say, Michael?
The scene in Brighton.
So I only heard the last section of what you said.
There's an enormous performing scene in Brighton.
There is a huge performing scene, and over the last 10 years, I've been putting lots of stuff on. I've had Arts Council funding for things, and I've employed some people who have been paid with Arts Council funding, and I've put things on where no one earns anything, and I've lost money. And in between, I've done directing jobs for the National Health Service, for example, corporate stuff, which has been so fucking stressful that at the end of it, I think, I'm never going to do this again. But if I don't do that, I can't fund the other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's this year I started thinking, you just got to stop this, because before I die, I have to go back to the art, which is where I fucking started. I have all the craft that I need now. But I've honestly started thinking, I can't go on with this. I've had people asking me to direct new plays and stuff, and I've been saying, get some money, because I'm not going to ask the actors to do this for fuck all. I'm just not going to do it anymore. It's not fair. Find a way to get the money. If you want me to do this, get some cash somehow. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely. And also, young actors, they have all this energy and they think they're going to go somewhere, and some of them may just do that.
But that's the whole idea of the training, then the career, and it isn't like that.
Exactly, and this is what has really started to fuck me off, because it's going on for too fucking long.
You have to do it, otherwise you can't. It is a compulsion.
I know it's a compulsion. I'm compulsed by it also.
Use that word out. I cannot say this often enough. Then, when you're not asleep, your focus is whatever it is your art. Otherwise, you are something else.
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, that the attitude to the kind of predicted demise of the theatre is, I said time and time again in the last 3 months, look, maybe it's going to stop being about people sitting in London waiting for somebody else to make decisions about their careers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Get something together and take it out of this city, take it to audiences, take it to art centres that don't have the same kind of financial constraints. Stop sitting in London waiting for somebody else to decide whether you work or not. If you have, because surely the work, and it's this confused thing about monetary gain for, you know, if I perform like this, I get paid. Yes, you have to get paid, you have to live. But right at the bottom of this, okay, is that the work is doing that which you do.
Yeah.
And too much of it is just handing over your career to an agent or a manager or a casting, and you just sit and wait for somebody else to decide whether you work or not.
Yeah.
And
isn't there a major problem here, though? Isn't there a major problem here that the theatre has been gradually just eroded in this country? I don't know about other countries. I haven't been to the theatre abroad for a long time, but I know last time I went to the theatre in Germany, it was pretty well funded and pretty lively scene. But in this country, it's been there's been a consistent, as I think Bush was referring to before, that no matter which government you get in, or whatever the political stripe is, there is universal sort of assumption that that the theatre is no longer necessary, and that it shouldn't be funded. And I know when I started working in theatre in the early 70s, it was pretty healthy. You know, every town, every small town had a rep, which produced lots of it produced a whole season of plays, and they do Shakespeare, they do 18th century comedies and Renaissance, whatever they're called, and they do occasionally they do things like Beckett and
a new play. I mean, getting to include in the season a new play. Shame Richard isn't here. He could talk to the cows come home about that one.
Well, exactly. We're straying now into the playwrights territory, and we don't have any playwrights here, you know. But I think it's I mean, don't you think? I mean, let me just throw that question out generally. Don't you think it's been actually destroyed as a thriving art form in the UK? Let me just give you a little anecdote. A friend of mine who died 2 years ago, Silvio Narazzano. He was a terrible guy. He directed. I think you might have met him, Tim. He was a real. He directed some films, quite well-known films, and he worked with some very famous people. And he was brought over. He was Canadian actually, but he had this conversation with Laurence Olivier one time, and he asked Laurence Olivier, "What's happened to all the British actors? You know, there used to be all these wonderful actors, Albert Finney and Billy Whitelaw, and where are they going to come from?" And Salari said to him, "Well, where are they going to come from? There is nowhere for them to come from anymore. That's you know, being gradually killed off. So if you don't have that theatrical culture going on, how are you going to have a thriving art form?" I'll throw that out. Michael's gone. Michael's disappeared.
Well,
I certainly agree that the building is dead, Camden. I think the theatre building is dead. And I struggle as a dance person. I keep saying, why are we putting our art form in a building that's named after another art form? Can someone tell me? But I think the buildings themselves have kind of died. I think the form, you know, one person moves into a space and then another. I think that watching people,
Well,
you know, the real basics of it, I don't think they've gone away. I mean, for me, you know, I have seen, I mean, since I started at the Green Room, I haven't really, this last 6 months is the longest I've been in one place for decades. So I've seen quite a lot outside. And one of the really uncomfortable truths, oh, this is being recorded, shit. Oh, well, I'll just say it. Mm-hmm. That some of the most exciting, vibrant, essential work that I've seen in the last 20 years has been coming out of countries where the state funding is shit. That state subsidy and quality of work, for me, unfortunately, don't equate. And I know that's not a very nice or popular thing to say, but...
Well, I think in a way that you have kind of hit on something that's quite important there, actually, Bush, because one of the things that I think this is society, which has a very vibrant arts and music scene, and I do both at the moment, okay? But one of the things that's actually started happening is people start saying, well, if I can't get any subsidy, or if it's hard, I'm going to do what I want to do, because I don't have to tick any boxes. So I'm just going to go out and do this. And if the people come, they will come. If they don't, then they don't. And I think that there is actually something healthy about that. Where it gets more complicated now is that, for example, somebody who was doing really, really well on the touring circuit, she was having a lot of success and she was doing pretty weird stuff, but she has a little kid, she was getting funding, and not very long ago, she said, I can't keep doing this because I can't sustain this and my child. So I don't know what she's doing now, but I think she started to do stuff for TV or whatever. But her work was really quite phenomenal and out there, and she was getting great reviews and everything, and was performing in quite large spaces, as were we last year. But we had some independent funding also, because somebody happened to see the show and said, oh, this is great, we'd like to give you some cash, and they did, and it was fine, and it helped us all out. But that's actually unusual. So where you're left at the end of it is, I got locked down, I don't have any work, and I've just been thinking, I'm going to do what I fucking want. So I'm actually organising street performance. I'm going to just go out and start performing on the street again, because I've done that before. I used to perform in Covent Garden.
But if you rent and your food were paid for, you'd do that every week, right?
Of course I would. Of course I would.
I think, Camden, I think that's the what's the word? That's the campaign we should be.
Yeah.
Universal credit, not universal credit.
They're bastards. Don't touch them.
Universal income. You know,
universal basic income.
Yeah, I think that, because again, related to what you're saying about the theatre being dead, Camden, I think we lose. I think I'll put myself in the theatre camp for now and call us we. That I think we lose some of the greatest new young minds. I don't think they see the theatre as a viable place to be expressing themselves. They find themselves in rap, in spoken word, in the visual arts, in fashion, online. We've lost a generation, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, at least one generation, maybe more.
But I mean, also, I think in the kind of mid-80s, there was a situation occurred, I actually saw it happening, where the theatre companies kind of realized that they couldn't sustain touring endlessly because some of the venues were shutting down. And the thing that happened is that quite a lot of the venues and quite a lot of artists started to do stand-up. So suddenly we were inundated with fucking stand-ups, because essentially all you do is you turn up, you do your show, and it's cheap, and the venues can sell drinks all night at the bar, which is where they make their money. And that's still happening, or was happening in Brighton before the lockdown. There are fucking stand-ups everywhere, but even the stand-ups now aren't getting paid very much. And it's just like, so
another nail on the head there, Rikki, for me, in terms of generational shift. When I started at the Green Room, I would be faced with groups of people.
Yeah.
Whether that be Forced Entertainment or Desperate Optimists or Reckless Sleepers, I'd be approached by groups of people. These days, well, I'm working in dance now, but the last few years, I'm just approached by individuals. You know, if you can get a duet on the stage these days, that's a big deal. I just want to park and just come back to your question or your thing about acting. What was it? The process of acting? Who asked that? Because in 2006, I put myself back on the stage.
Did you?
Yeah, because I'd listened, how long? It's been 25 years since
Rebecca's here.
Okay.
It'd been 25 years since I'd performed. And, you know, I thought, well, 20 years of sitting watching, Rivca, 20 years of sitting watching, that may, I think I might know something. But within 20 minutes of being on the floor, it was like, no, that was complete. What you learned as a member of the audience isn't going to help you stood here now.
Absolutely. That's the reason I still perform now, these days.
Hey, Rivca.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Rikki. Hi, Bush. That just came from the grand reunion meeting.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, that's your relative there.
Who's that?
Who dat? Grandpa.
That's your grandpa. Yeah. They just don't know the others. The others don't
What
know.
happened to your teeth, kid?
They fell out.
What happened to your teeth?
They fell out.
Did you eat lots of sweets or something?
No, they just fell out.
Okay.
Wow. They just fell out, Camden.
Well, I suppose that happens.
Does.
But actually, Rivca would be a good person to kind of ask that question, because it was around that time that Physical State International came into being, and the whole notion of training around physical theatre.
Oh, yeah. I've still got all the programs for that.
Have you?
Yep.
That's more than I do. I mean, you are an archive in yourself, aren't you, Rikki?
I should hope so.
Yeah, good. I mean, I'm glad, because I'm relying on all these posters and leaflets you have.
Yep.
I have things like 50 of one and nothing of others, and forget that I was in shows.
Well,
And if I forget the shows that even existed, I don't know if anybody else is having that.
Well,
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
that's why I'm interested in having this discussion, because reflecting upon how it was then and how it is now, I find very fascinating in terms of the future, because I mean, I'm still out there doing stuff, you know what I mean? I'm still doing things, and I'm very interested in talking about how certain things were lost or weren't encouraged and why. And that comes down to who was in control of the venues. If you take away the certain of the venues that we thought we could do things in, then you're left with the thing that I think you were hinting at earlier on, Bush, is that you just go out there and you start doing it. If the audience come, then they come. It's hard, but if that's what you've got to do, that's what you've got to do.
I mean, it's the total neoliberal model, isn't it? I mean, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking.
It does smack to me of neoliberalism, and that's what I don't like about that argument. I think you really have to fund the performing arts. It's no longer really a crucial part of our culture. People will spend, 12 quid on a cinema ticket to go and see the latest film. But theatre is something that actually, if you want to keep it alive, you have to fund it. The same with opera, and the same with any other sort of performing art form. Orchestras don't they don't earn a profit. They never have.
Who hasn't, Camden?
Orchestras.
What?
Orchestras.
Orchestras. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had an interest.
Performing arts.
I had an interesting conversation running that place in Copenhagen, Camden, where I brought a slightly neoliberal view to the economics. It's like, the money that's going out versus the money that's coming in. Either we sell more tickets, or the tickets we're selling we have to make a little bit more expensive. And there was this huge response from the Scandies, which was, no, that won't fly. That just ain't gonna fly. Why not? Because Danish people think they've already paid for their culture.
Wow.
In their taxes. And that's the argument always I bang my head. I mean, the cake ain't gonna get any bigger, Camden. So in order to fund something here, we need to defund something there. Otherwise, the cake just has to grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because prior to this period that you're talking about, prior to the 1980s, there were these repertory theatres in all of these towns, but the kind of work that we four, I think, are talking about had nowhere. These arts labs started to pop up, didn't they?
Yeah.
Back.
And then
there were people like Samuel Beckett and Harold Pinter, but during that period before.
Oh, you're back, Michael.
I am.
Hi, Michael.
Sorry about that, gentlemen.
I still can't come up with an answer to that one.
Okay, I don't know what the question was, but two things that just came into my mind. Hi, Michael. Was the Bush? You may know which of the cities in the States have tourism tax. So anywhere the tourists stay, the hotels have an automatic, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20% that goes into the arts.
Portland,
Public.
New Orleans.
Quite a few. So that seems to be working in that particular place because it's giving freedom what to do with it. And then I'm thinking that before the 70s, there would have been experimentation through the cabarets, the political cabaret scene and the underground scene in those countries where people weren't allowed to say what they wanted to say. That's pretty thriving. Not on what money or bananas.
Well, it's the basic question of how to fund the arts, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the basic question of how to fund the arts. You chuck money at it. That's basically how you fund the arts. Rebecca.
Yes.
We were talking before about fusion and foundation.
Yeah.
And Rikki was talking about that history of what happened, and then it ended up as foundation. But I think didn't you do some productions?
Yeah, it ended up as that, but that wasn't foundation. It was fusion and caboodle.
Foundation was started at the same time. We started it, if you remember.
Yeah, we did, and that was the forerunner of PSI. So that, like Bush was saying, was the start of providing what is now called CPD for what is now called emerging artists. Now that those terms were around at that time, I remember. But Foundation did summer schools with a performance element, like Abra and Moss. But it was really the summer schools bringing people together. They did stuff. There was a performance. But it didn't produce work.
We did produce one thing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was called Love and Truffles, and it was dreadful.
I had forgotten.
Love and Truffles, come on. Should have been a musical, then it would have been...
Yeah.
He chose it.
Let's put it in the compost bin. Maybe something comes by imagining it to be rotting and then ripening into something else.
Yeah, he chose the script and he got me to direct it. And I remember looking at the script and thinking, what the fuck is this? But we got paid for doing it. I mean, it was mad. Anyway, we got funding for it.
Yeah, see, this is where the funding went.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't my idea. I was just
gatekeeping the money.
Oh, fuck. Love and Truffles.
Remember that phrase that was terribly popular at the time? The right to fail. Everybody was talking about the right to fail. You don't hear that now.
And I find that, I mean, so for me in that statement are two hugely problematic words that I would love to just not us using at all.
Right and fail.
Right. Who's right? Who gives the right? Whose right is it to give? And fail. Why do we even have fail?
Yeah. Fail what? How? What
this was a phrase that was used to describe and justify to some extent a lot of experimental work in those days. But that phrase, one has to have the right to fail. What?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And what is success and by whose criteria?
But basically, what it boiled down to was you could put on it and it would be publicly funded.
It's a bit of a license, isn't it? It's a license to do stuff, maybe with a bit less pressure.
I must admit, I have used that term. At least I've said I do want to protect the artist's right to fail.
I think we can shift that language into a bit more now.
Yeah, no, but this is a history. We're talking about history.
It probably means something else, but then it was almost an entity in itself.
That's what I'm saying.
You know?
Yeah, it's great. I can make art too, and it was really shit. Well, it was the stuff that I made anyway.
Rebecca, can you talk a little bit about what you did, the stuff that you did after the foundation thing? Because I think you set up your own dance company and you worked with Mike Mayhew. You then had another brief company for a while.
I then had another child, yeah.
And you had a few more kids, yeah.
Few more kids. So quickly, just as you said, actually. So Foundation, Rikki, turned into Fiscal State International, and the name actually came about from Steve Curtis.
Our absent friend.
Good old Steve. You know, I remember that. And yeah, so that was all training. Again, with performance element at the end. Some things were 3 weeks long. I think there was even 6 weeks long projects. I remember at the time, and I still do that, doing things a bit too early, like the ground was not fertile. Bringing over Susan Klein and Barbara Mahler was too early, and then Brenton Keeney did it 8 months later. But we did bring over a few really good people. And I think at that time, that was sort of right late 80s, early 90s. I remember doing projects where people didn't pay to come on it were really problematic because we had such an association, we still have, with the more, if you charge for something, it means it's worth something. The more you charge, the more valuable it is. The more expensive a training course is, the more you will focus on it to get something out, because you put something in, because you've given something away that makes a significant dent in your life. You have one holiday less or whatever. So, and I think that is also, sorry, I keep talking about now, I think it's something I'd really like to start shifting, to move out of this equation of money and value. The more expensive the ticket is, like you said, Camden, the more worth it is. And so I've decided that all the training I want to do in future will be by donation only. People can donate. And I'll trust that we can get our heads around that things can have value without. So I'm not sure about the whole how to fund things now. But yeah, sorry.
That's the way a lot of things are going, isn't it? That seems to be the way a lot of things are going. Like, you know,
I think it starts inspiring.
We're going to do it anyway, but you know, donate if you can.
Donate if you want. You know, if you want. No, sorry, Michael.
It's a bit like a lot of those venues who are doing, say, somewhere like the Arcola in Dalston, Tuesday night. Pay what you can. They ask £5, but, you know, sometimes that's beyond the means of people. Yes, the more you pay for it, the more. We cannot go back to, I don't care if there is not a Christina March Theatre left in the West End. I never thought I'd say this word, but here I am.
Well said.
We cannot pay £95 for a single stall seat.
Fucking joke.
No experience in the world is worth that. Come on, really? It has to change, and if this has taught us anything, it is surely a hiatus in which that can be rethought. All this things about, oh, we can't possibly open because we're going to be playing at 30% capacity or 72% capacity. Yeah, that's because we've got so used year on year to, you know, 95, over £100 for a single seat. What is worth that? Come along. Really.
And yet we can get music and enjoy music for free by anybody.
Yes.
But Rebecca, what was the work that you did? I mean, we've called this meeting Manchester Fringe Theatre, but a lot of the stuff that you did was more like dance, yeah? Or was it dance theatre?
Well, that's what I'm not really going
and Rikki was talking about the visual aspects of your work together before.
So the only bit that I actually did myself was that Rivca Rubin dance company, which was physical somewhat. It wasn't very good. I'd rather not even bring it up. I mean, I think it was a bit of a, allowed to try and fail. And I did notice that it just wasn't good enough. I wish more people would. But then that's also because at that time I was already facilitating after show discussions, or was about to, and sort of really realizing how many people stayed in it because of this given right of, well, I've come out of university, therefore I have the right to make work, and therefore I have the right to fail. And it's what is it? What is that when you have when you assume
entitlement?
Entitlement. Yeah. Or well, I've put 3 years of my life into, therefore I must carry on. And you go, but please don't. You're really good at baking bread. Maybe divert anyway. So I luckily did work that one out myself and freed myself, which took about 3 years. And then I realized how long it actually takes to leave something behind and not go, oh, I ought to, because I have already. But what was your question? Yes, I did work with
my question really is, why is there a fringe theatre and not a fringe dance?
There is a fringe dance.
I've never heard the two words together though.
No.
Isn't it usually experimental dance?
I mean, outside of the ballet, it's all pretty fringe.
And even the ballet is now.
Can I just, something that Rivca said that I think might be quite interesting, Camden, in terms of the theatre is dead moment. It's to do with economics. And that one of the things is that the West End, the economics of the West End are incredible. I have a friend who needs to remain nameless, who directed a Hollywood movie that got an Oscar, but now there are 3 or 4 versions of it around the world. And I was teasing him for being a rich bastard. And, you know, because he'd made this Hollywood movie. And he said, no, I can't make any money on that.
I think I know who it is.
Yeah, but we don't need to say it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I make all my money in the theatre.
Mm.
Because of the capacity of the theatre, the popularity of the show, the fact it's in tandem with a movie has made him, I guess, millions probably. But we're in the same game in the green room with 160 seats. You know, under the same neoliberal, like you say, Camden, it's horribly neoliberal, but the venues are working under the same constraints in a way that the people, I mean, we could talk about boards for a while. I mean, they have been the bane of my fucking life as an artistic director of an institution.
I remember it well, Bush.
The conversations are always about money. It's always about being risk averse. I had a board member say to me at the green room, maybe you should go for some safe programming like soft jazz. This was a week before I presented 2 nights of Ron Athy. I don't know if you know Ron Athy, one of the cutters and bleeders.
Yeah.
Very
Well, 2 nights sold out. That's safe programming in the green room.
Yeah.
But the way that, you know, although people thought I could do what I wanted at the green room and all the other places I've been, I've not. I've got 10 people who think they know everything about everything saying, no, we can't risk our mortgages on that.
I had exactly the same experience when I started to work at the Eden bloody project. Everything I did, I had to present to a board, and it was always about how much does it cost. Oh no, you can't put zip wires in. That will cost an absolute fortune, Rikki. You can't do this. You can't. And in the end, I was just saying, well, what the fuck can I do? I can't do anything. It's like, and in the end, I just started doing it.
And they pull this stunt, Camden. The bottom line is it's public money.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, yeah, but Farmer Giles, he doesn't have a board. He gets public money. Make the CEO, artistic director, economically responsible. Then you won't see any deficits, motherfucker. Yeah, you can record that. That was 30 years. 30 years of frustration.
Can I add something? Sorry, Mike.
Exactly the same argument he was having in 1963. Exactly the same argument. Olivier and Loach Chandos about the National Theatre and programming and money every time. You know, he would probably have had an equal life if he'd used that argument.
It really isn't a new thing. Rivca.
Yes, I think that this whole, I mean, we've been practicing doing economic growth for a rather long time, many decades. And I think we're only now beginning to realize that there's a possibility of thinking other than growth, any growth. I think we're slowing the fuck down if we're choosing to. I'm practicing that at the moment without going on, you know, it's not like holiday and overworking, it's slow working and taking pauses and yeah, anyway, my point is, I think the boards are changing because now it is possible to change, it is possible to focus elsewhere with some external assistance or internal bubbling. So for instance, also with our team at the moment and our board, which we've carefully put together, but there's still quite often somebody may ask something and the knee jerk is, oh, we haven't got that in the budget. Not because they want to stop it, just that's what we're used to. We can't do that. We haven't got it in the budget, yeah. And what we're starting to introduce is that any of us who want to go, it's not possible, followed up with how it could be possible. So it's not possible at this very moment. It could be possible if we weave it through this or that project, or we start it in 2 months' time, or we move this from there. So that in any conversation, anyone, even personal, we just stop going, no, we can't. We go, can't do it now. This is how we could. And I think that's a real shift in our communicating and not prioritizing money, because we're not used to that either yet. Just stop the whole growth.
Yeah. But in 1991, Camden, I think that the opposite of what Rivca's talking about was really gaining pace. I got caught up in it. If Steve was here, he did. We'd have two shows in the daytime, for children or whatever. Clear the stage. Evening show, 8 o'clock start, hour and a half. Maybe Caboodle or whoever. Get them out, and then a late night show with the stand up or whatever. He was putting 4 shows in a day, in and out, and that was just all driven by the economics of trying to stay afloat.
Are there any dream projects? Are there any dream projects that didn't happen that you wanted to do?
Yes. I did.
Yes.
I wanted to do, there's 2 things. We wanted to do Living on Peroxide.
I was just going to say that.
That's Rikki and I, and maybe Steve Purcell was involved.
No, it was somebody else, actually. It wasn't Steve. It was somebody else.
And we didn't get the funding for that.
No.
But
what was that called?
Living on Peroxide.
Peroxide. I'm sure, Rikki, you remember what it's about, but it had sets. It had a house that then fell apart or something.
Yeah, it was very visual. Yeah.
Of course. And then the other one that I wanted to do was to have a choreographed cooking thing with big cameras watching chefs make food Piccadilly on sort of like a platform and televise it on big screens. But I don't think anybody took me seriously at that moment. I was too young. Well, that's my reason. Those 2 we didn't do.
If I had any dream projects, I can't remember, Camden, but I really want to take this opportunity to say that I feel privileged, really privileged, to have been the artistic director of the Green Room from 1990 to 1997. I couldn't have been in a better place at a better time. I mean, it was a real privilege, and I'm grateful for the, all the things that, because I was in, had contact with the 3 of you, and maybe it didn't feel like that at the time. Well, I didn't feel privileged at the time, I'll be frank with you. It felt like a fucking...
One never does.
What did you feel, Bush?
It felt like a lot of responsibility and a lot of weight, actually, is what it felt like. And it wasn't until much later, probably when I got to Copenhagen, that I realized that the job was really expectation management. Board, staff, public, artists, funders. It's all about, that job is all about managing those expectations.
Yeah.
But that time and that learning for me in that city at that time is one of the most important times of my life, and I feel really privileged.
Ditto. I remember the Blue Man group.
The what group?
The Blue Man group.
Yeah, I remember that show. Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you a question then? You audience, local artist and audience members, because doing
loyal
that,
audience members, loyal,
absolutely important. But I want to I know how you felt about me bringing things from outside of Manchester, because in my other jobs since then, I've come up against resistance sometimes about, well, why are you bringing that thing from Spain when this is around the corner? And, local artists being ignored and threatened. Whilst I wanted to stimulate, really, was what I was trying to do, and perhaps set an agenda. Or but how did you feel about that?
That's what the green room was set up to do, really. Were there any companies that complained about not getting their shots?
Well, actually, yeah, Michael Mayhew would be a good example. Actually, he's already come up in the conversation, and I remember
plenty of opportunity. He'll always known.
But I remember a conversation with him that is also pertinent, which is, yes, Michael, artists should be paid, but there's a couple of supplementary questions, which is how much and by whom. We need to, and it was Dogs of Heaven time, and I went to see something he'd done in the Crescent in Hume, and it was fucking amazing, man. It was like Manchester's answer to La Fureur del Baus. I was pumped. My adrenaline was going. It was like brilliant. It is fucking brilliant. But then I had said to Mike, look, don't come anywhere near places like the Green Room, because of all the legislations that we have to adhere to. It would be a fucking nightmare for you and for us, and it would completely take away from what's really going on in the art. Back to the art, as we've been talking about. But the art in a place like the Green Room is completely the wrong context. It would kill it. So, okay, sorry. So, but Ricky's right. You know, you can't please all the people all the time. And if you're the fairy on top of the Christmas tree, you better suck that up pretty quick, or you're going to go nuts, or be very disappointed.
Needle.
You know, I feel I lost my family through the Green Room.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, when the choice between my family and the Green Room always won. But it doesn't take away from the privilege that I had in that time. Anyway, I'm getting a bit emotional now.
Ah.
And it's been recorded.
That was going to be my next question, just a general question. Do you feel nostalgic?
Yeah.
About that time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Michael?
Never before and never again. Everything was possible and nothing made sense.
What did you do? What were you doing at that time that you, I don't know, that maybe you look back on with fondness?
Ecstasy. Said the voice from the dark.
So my bit of nostalgia is I had a chat with Mary, who I was just staying with. We were reminiscing actually yesterday about the touring circuit, like the Trent Arts Centre and the Green Room and the whatever trend. So that sort of, I hadn't thought of it for such a long time, but that little circuit that we all did with our vans. We nearly killed ourselves, but you know, loads of people did. So that was a lovely little thing, because it's like going out on tour with your family, wasn't it? And getting in and getting out. And the other thing that I really like is that it was possible to do it all yourself, from writing it, rehearsing it, directing or not, Camden directing it, performing it, doing the sets.
But protecting your actors from bad directors.
For instance, yeah, doing the live.
Hope that doesn't include me.
No, Rikki.
No, you're the
one
only
of the
one
good ones.
of course. But, and quite interchangeable. People didn't go, oh, that's not my department. Most people could do lights. Most people could make a poster in some way. You know, it was a much more together without this delineation of, well, that's my discipline and I'm not. No.
The interesting experience I had last year with this show I was doing, which went on a long tour, was really distressing in some of the places that we went to. It reminded me of all the bad bits of touring with Caboodle. And I was just thinking, this can't go on. Huh? Sorry, I didn't hear you, Michael. What did you say?
You're crashing the van coming back from Cardiff.
Crashing the van.
The Swansea Festival.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
At the wheel.
Yeah. Bloody hell. That was heavy.
Just back to
the closet. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
What do you remember?
The closet.
What's the closet?
It was.
Hopkinson and I did.
I remember it well. Yeah.
It must have been I can't remember what company you were then. I think it was your company. It was a double bill.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember the closet now that you say. Yeah. Was it
driving
the arms by any chance?
And whoever was driving fell asleep at the wheel momentarily, and that alert. I kept thinking, if I'm on a plane and it drops, it's never going to feel like that. You just have to stop and come to our senses, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But is it maybe that just because we get older, we do this nostalgic thing as people do? Oh, those were the days. Oh, do you remember? It used to be really.
Practically, it was easier then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was easier.
It was much easier. Just back to that do-it-yourself thing and Crew and Alsager, actually, Rikki.
Yeah.
We did these exchanges with PS122 in New York.
Yeah.
And one guy that came, the Alien comic, Tom Murren.
Right.
Left us now some years ago. I took him to do a workshop at Crew and Alsager.
Right.
And he started the whole thing by saying, well, it's pretty straightforward. He said, get the gig, make the flyer, make the show. I was like, Tom.
That was it.
That was pretty much it. And then he just talked about it, but it's get the gig, make the flyer, make the show.
That's a bit like going round to Richard Gallagher's house with a bottle of gin and a packet of Benson and Hedges king size and saying, drink this, smoke these, and write the fucking play.
Yeah. And he will. He will.
That's how French Paste happened.
I know. I remember. I love him. I loved him. I've got his. No, I haven't got his number anymore. It was here. God, it's gone.
Rivca, we were talking earlier about the transition from education into career or whatever that next step is. Your training was dance training, right?
Yes, it was in Berlin. But then when I went to Amsterdam, 1978 to 1980, I did 2 international summer schools, and that was physical theatre. And that's the bit that I've always wanted to do. I always wanted to do theatre. I just didn't understand it, and I didn't have really any training in it. So I just sort of asked about and pretended to. But yeah, my heart was always in physical theatre and not in dance.
But was your expectation that you would then have a career?
Well, I don't think I ever thought in terms of career. Luckily, I wasn't brought up to be thinking career. And sorry, my mind is somewhere else at the moment, which I'm thinking, no, you're talking about the money. And I think, again, this weird equation of we need to be paid for our art, I think that's already problematic. I think we require money to live. I mean, definitely much more on the sort of like healthy communist thing. Could we just all have money to live? 4 day a week, whatever, people want to work, you can work 8 days. What is it called? Basic wage?
Basic universal income, is it? Camden?
Yeah. Because all this,
I was talking about that before. Yeah,
that's the campaign, Rivca. That's where we can all join together.
I think that's where we can go, because I think it is us who created this shitty fucking situation of the 80s and 90s. We are part of that by going, let's professionalize it. And then, of course, the Arts Council professionalized it. And then the categories came, the boxes came, and the criteria came, and there was panels of the panel people who looked down and go, oh, does it meet the criteria or not? I mean, all of that we created, and we asked for things to be a remuneration for your art. What a pathetic, now I'm thinking about it, argument. Actually,
well, actually, it wasn't. But wasn't it the case that a lot of the art that at that time that we're talking about was done on the dole? Really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It was kind
cut
of
to
UPI.
It wasn't the art that was done on the dole. We were on the dole and we chose to make art, and other people on the dole and choose to do other things. So I think the equation of money and art,
Make rock groups or something. Yeah.
Whatever, it's just to have a living that you can sustain yourself, and you choose to do that which you're dedicated in, because you can, might also mean that some people going, okay, I did my 3 years at college, and actually, no, it's not really my thing. I'm not really, I don't really have anything to say. I'm not really dedicated. I have enough money to live, so therefore I don't have to force myself into the eyes of the theatre public and, you know, push by letter going, give me space, give me an opportunity because I deserve it. I mean, it is so, it's so money related.
Yeah.
I know I'm an artist because I will have been given a fee, therefore equals value.
I mean, I come up against that in my working life all the time, Rivka. And what I'm asking people to reconsider is art as the generator of their food and rent. As the prime, if you make the art the prime generator of your food and rent, is it really art? Do you know what I mean? Because in order to make the art, to provide those things, it's got to be formed to fit something.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember the 6-week thing, that your Arts Council application, you can make a show in 6 weeks. And suddenly, forced ends, that's the bit I wanted to say. Suddenly it became 6 weeks to make a show, but you can get paid for 6 weeks. And luckily, somebody didn't follow it. Forced Ends said, no, we make our shows in 9 months. So we'll take the 6 weeks money and then we'll do whatever enterprise allowance and being on the dole. But we choose the length we make our show, and we're not making it money dependent. Luckily, we had that. The French, of course, paid for a lot more weeks or months to make shows anyway. But you know, we co-created this system by taking part in it and competing with one another. And look how we were all quite secretive, going, "Oh, don't tell them that we're doing that. That's ours, copyright." I think we've got a transparency that's coming up that is quite delicious. Anyway, we are doing that at the mill, and so I'm now much more in the visual, not entirely visual, but visual.
Actually, part of my job currently, I've got to put together some online stuff, and one of the online lectures I want to put on, Rivka, is about open source, both as a concept and how do you execute open source in the digital and in the analog world. I mean, that will be followed by a lecture in intellectual property and copyright. I mean, I'm all about broadness. And then another one on cultural appropriation.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to have Creative Commons and people don't put in a bloody copyright for Black Lives Matter in England, that you then suddenly go, fuck, I've got to copyright my idea. You know, I think all that ownership and authorship, which already the Grand Union questioned in the late 70s, maybe we can start doing away with, like, oh, it's mine, I had the idea. Bollocks. There's 2,000, 3,000, 20,000 years beforehand that lead all the way up to, and lots of conversations between people like us, and then suddenly somebody's got an idea that's a bit like, and somebody else goes, oh, but how about that? I mean, it is co-formed. There's selection happening, you know.
But again, I think that's very tied into the neoliberal thing, Camden. The conversation around authorship and ownership, it plugs straight into the whole neoliberal idea. Just kind of know where else you can go somehow.
Yeah, and all these titles, you know, with the Grand Reunion, sorry, other people don't know, but I'm part of what was called the co-curational co-curating team, and we think, fucking hell, that's like sort of what the five gods of the co-curators. So we've already shifted that to instigators. And I think
what exactly is that you're talking about at the moment?
Oh, I'm talking about a conference that was meant to be 10 days. Bush is part of it. That's turned into a 2-year thing. And it's much more, my point is not so much about that. It's called Grand Reunion, so you can look it up if you like. But it's more about these titles we've been giving ourselves to have a particular status and standing, you know, and a very, you know, we're maintaining that incredibly hierarchical system that we're struggling with. Like, I am, you know, and I think all of that we start shedding. It's like cobwebs, get out. And the 80s was still fun. It was really fun.
So identity, one sheds one's identity, or what?
Well, what does it do, these identities? It just separates us, doesn't it? If I'm going, I'm this, I'm not that. And the beauty of the 80s was that we were actually doing lots of different things. We were printing the posters and squidging them ourselves, and we were doing directing steps into each other. So we had less of a fixed identity and hierarchy. Less, not entirely. But then we started really dealing in it. Well, I'm this, I'm that. And now we're going cross-media again and multi, and we can be everything. We're rediscovering we can just be human and do things.
I just want to add into also in that period, Rivca, I think we also knew more about connection and community amongst. We understood that as individuals, well, I understood as an individual artist, I didn't have a great deal of oomph. Whereas if I collaborated with these people, and we were all flat because we were all on supplementary benefit. I think, and forced entertainment, you know, probably could. I don't have groups coming to me anymore. It's all individuals.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Bush was saying that before. It really has become like stand-up comedy.
Okay.
World. There aren't theatre companies like, you know, like you and Rikki. You wouldn't exist now because you couldn't afford to do it.
Oh, okay. I hadn't thought of that, considered that. I've not been following. So now you go and see Russell Maliphant rather than DV8.
Yeah.
Now you'll have Annabelle, whatever, instead of Complicity.
Yeah, you might see 6 dancers or 6 people on the stage, but it'll be one person, basically, in most cases. There will be notable exceptions, Lucy Soggett being one, but...
It's that whole idea of the genius, isn't it? The genius and the...
Yeah.
And the followers.
The tortured genius. I mean, something else I've tried, in the dance world, I've tried to break apart is, you know, the tortured genius goes into the studio and closes the door, and then 7 weeks later comes out with a masterpiece. I mean, it was
on their own,
and it was all going on.
Yeah.
In the one city, in the one time.
Yeah.
Which companies did you work with, Tim?
I've never worked with anybody once, as you know.
Oh no, do tell.
I'm gonna ask this question to Bush in a minute as well. So, which companies did you work with that you can remember?
Whatever you're at.
From that time. Oh. We're talking about 8.
I did 3 shows at the Green Room in the 1980s.
Yeah.
One was 13 dinner.
Okay.
I remember that wonderful banter you had with the audience member about how I was being artificial, and you said, no, he believes he is Tallulah Bankhead, so shut up. And
that's great.
It was Q&A afterwards, and oh God, one that should never have happened but did, and an actress Maria Clark, who was in it, got a very good review in the Evening News. Didn't help her later career, but it didn't matter. A play called Blood and Ice about the creation of Frankenstein, which is a very good play, but very badly done. And then, of course, there was French Based, which started its life. There was also, I guess it must have been under the aegis of Rivca and Rikki that we double billed The Closet, which started life at the gallery as a lunchtime piece.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it did, yeah.
Bill Hopkinson was the two old queens, one bold, the other frustrated. We'd be the right age now, it would make sense.
Yes.
It's more the things I saw. When I read I said this to you, Cam, when I read your article, it was suddenly all the things I remembered seeing.
Yeah.
Like movie and that amazing production of Decadence, when it was at the Contact, but upstairs, and that, you know, everything was upstairs. You climbed so many, it's a wonder nobody fell to their death. You climbed so many rickety flights of stairs to sit in a flat, low-roof space and watch. You know, God knows what was going to happen. And wasn't it wonderful? It's more the things I saw that I remember. And I realise now how much that threads into how I would approach stuff now. I didn't realise at the time. 3 years I spent at the Folly were, oh, yes, this is telephone acting. This is writing acting. You know. I wouldn't have been able to do, all right, it's been limited, but I wouldn't have been able to do the things I've done had I not seen those things. And it all threads in to everything you still do. I think you take those things with you.
Yeah, they were great, weren't they?
Just a quick question, Camden. Have you tried to find Denise and George?
Yeah.
And?
Well, Ricky's in touch with George.
Yeah, I'm in touch with George.
Right.
So that would be
I invited Denise to this meeting. Let me just ask Bush. Bush, you haven't told us. You haven't really talked about the Manchester theatre companies, and that's what this meeting is supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
Manchester.
And I'd like you to talk about them, or to mention some of them, because you talked about forced entertainments and
people from
groups
outside.
like that.
Sheffield. God, we don't want people from Sheffield when we're talking Manchester.
We're talking about Manchester Fringe Theatre. So, and you took over in 1990.
Yeah.
Right. And until 97. So you went right the way through the end of the period that we're talking about.
Rolls off.
And what
everybody's leaving Camden.
Yeah, they're all.
No, I'm still here.
No, I'm just making food. I've just been on the road for 6 hours.
Yeah, I've got to have some food too.
Still listening. Totally, fully.
Go on, and me.
Yeah. So who do I remember?
What actual Manchester theatre companies did you put on at the Green Room that you can remember that they actually did a decent show?
Well, I remember you. Rikki, I think you might. I'm not sure whether you did or didn't do anything.
Before your time, Butch.
Yeah, I felt that. I mean, definitely with Caboodle we did stuff, but by then I think they'd become Liverpool based.
Yeah. I was with Caboodle in the early stages, and we did do something, and after that I left.
Yeah.
And I went to work for Welfare State.
Who else? The Glee Club.
Yeah. I remember them. What happened to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark is in Morecambe.
What's he doing? What's he doing there?
Then I'm starting to dry up, actually, Camden.
Direct Works.
Direct Works. That name rings a bell.
He was working with Ducky as well.
Yeah. Nick Brace, was he called?
Nick what?
Nick Brace. Maybe that was towards the end. So theatre companies, then there were the live arts people like Lawrence and that kind.
Yeah, Lawrence Lane, yeah.
And the dance company.
Live art, right? Okay.
Again, can't remember her name, but theatre companies, not so many. I think.
Do you remember a company called Spinsters?
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, the name I remember.
The name I remember. They sound like a feminist company, but that's me making assumptions. Oh, what were the two women called?
Lip Service.
Lip Service, yeah.
Lip Service.
I remember them.
Oh my God, of course. How come? Yeah, they would be great to invite Maggie and Sue.
I think
I
we've
did
invited
invite
them.
Maggie. I'm in touch with Maggie, but she didn't make it.
Ducott? Didn't get it, Michael.
It's still the white straight men in the majority. And is that reflective of how it is now?
I'm not white.
Certainly was.
I'm not white.
I think you're the only one, Camden, from that whole era.
Oh,
Yeah.
Was it all white straight men?
Fucking white.
I look all white, but my dad was black.
Yeah, we know, but that's only because we know. And then there's Rikki. Sorry, Rikki is also not totally white.
Yeah, and boring. We're just talking about the theatre companies, the work that they did at that time, which was a really good time for theatre, and it goes up to the period of 1994. To the year 1994, when Manchester was City of Drama.
Right.
Okay, I mean, maybe does that mean anything to you?
Yeah, it does mean a lot to me. It means a great deal to me, actually, and how pissed off I was about that.
Yeah.
And me too, because I did a big show in it.
Talk about that. Somebody else is coming in. It's Jackie.
So I did the Clayman, which was in some big empty space, and beforehand we did it in Nottingham, and then we did it in some space in Manchester City of Drama. The review's online somewhere, I think. So it was an epic experiment, and we performed it in Nottingham first, and then we were invited to perform it in the Manchester City of Drama, which was just exhausting. It was exhausting, absolutely exhausting. We imported tons of earth, which we then had to shovel up and remove from the venue, which was a big empty warehouse space in an area I can't remember the name of.
Was it in Hume? Was it in that church in Hume?
No, it was.
That was amazing, Camden. That church, fucking hell, off the rails.
Oh yeah, it was. Oh God, I can't remember. It was I think it became a museum of some kind.
Oh, down Castlefield.
Yes, that was the area.
Okay.
Castlefield. And again, I've still got a whole load of photographs of it and all sorts of things. It was that was after I'd worked for Welfare State International. Thank you.
Let's talk a bit about that, Camden, because I've got a bit of a bee in my arse about that.
Okay.
That I need to let fly, which was that those things had to be bid for. You had to make a bid to be the City of Drama. It was a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to make the bid for the City of Drama, the Royal Exchange, the library, the Contact, the Green Room, possibly even the Abraham Moss, most of the theatres in Manchester got together, led by Dave Moutre, who should be fucking given the freedom of the city, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, he should be given a medal.
You know, he should be given a fucking medal.
Well, he is the medal at the moment.
And we all pulled, and it was so exciting. It was so exciting because it was like, fuck, you know, actually we can talk together, and we are on a similar page, and we could exchange ideas. And look, when we work together, we can be successful. But I think most of us were saying, let's continue with this. Can we please continue? You know, we would like to continue with this collaboration. The last thing we need is an external artistic director. Boom. That's what we got.
Happened?
Yeah, that's what we got. Chris Barron.
Oh, okay, that was Chris Barron. Okay.
So it became a completely different. You know, it became a different animal. You see, an issue I had with the City of Drama, for example, was the Nia Centre. Remember the Nia Centre?
Yeah, I remember.
I mean,
Yeah.
Talk about. Let's set some people up to fail here. You know, we want to leave a legacy. Yeah, let's leave that. I mean, a huge venue with nothing like enough support, either, you know, emotionally or technically or capital, given all the same kind of what you call it, benchmarks to meet, and they put this fucking huge thing in the middle of Hume, yeah, in the middle of a gang war. It's like, you know, that's the kind of irresponsible stuff that goes on with these cities of culture. They look big and shiny for a while, but then they just leave this wreck behind. And particularly when it comes to cultural communities, I'm so fed up with seeing people being used in that way.
Yeah.
Presenting this, you know, United Colours of Benetton UK, and using culture and theatre and dance as the instrument to put that forward. I'm fed up with it.
Can I just get back to the creative thing, Bush?
Thanks, Camden, to try and get back on track. Back on track. Yeah.
Oh, it's on record. It's been recorded. It's being recorded. Jackie, we can't see you. Where are you?
I'm in the alley.
Oh, are
In
you?
Rushfield. Yeah. Can you see
Right.
it? I'm outside.
Yeah.
There's loads of horns beeping because it's Pakistan International Day, and there's Rushhome's very lively at the moment.
Wow. Well, we used to live there. I used to live there with Rikki and Rebecca. We all used to.
Is that where you are?
Around the corner there.
Someone actually in Manchester. Are you in Manchester, Rebecca?
I am. I've just arrived back in Bournemouth, and I was just thinking, out of all of us, who is actually still living here? Jackie? Me?
Yeah.
That's it.
You knew. That's it.
So the guys have left, and the females are still here, just in this.
So Jackie, we're on City of Drama, 1994. It was a whole year of Manchester being the centre of drama in the whole of Europe.
I can't remember.
Remember it?
I must have done something. I'd have to sort of think back what I was doing in '94. I think I'd.
If you were there, you can't remember it.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff with David Hoyle around that time. Divine David.
We were working with David, and you were working with us with Raw Material, and we did a retrospective of the Everyday Life series.
Oh, was that in '94?
At the
the dance house.
Because Rikki was just talking about dance house.
Was that part of the Year of Drama then?
Yeah.
See, I didn't realise it was part of the Year of Drama.
Yeah.
Right. You know, when you're in it and you can't see what it's its overall context. But yeah.
That sums up the whole thing, really. It's a great quote.
So what else happened that year? Was it Everyday Life Trilogies, Berlin, Japan, and Hollywood? Is that it? And we did something with what's that venue in Salford? Near Chapel Street. And Rachel was in it as well. There's Rachel and Philippa. And I think that was Everyday Life in Hollywood. Was that 94? It was in a venue. It was a venue on the main. Is it? I can't remember what the road's called. But it was a building on a corner. Is it where Massa used to be?
Adelphi.
No, it was nearer to Victoria end of Chapel Street.
Was it?
Was it the pub? The upstairs.
Was it Fassbinder play? We were doing a Fassbinder play.
Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. I remember the costumes of these stripy handkerchief hem full length dresses.
And the Four Twins. We did the Four Twins.
That was it, the Four Twins. Yes, the Four Twins.
Which was a play by Coppi, by an Argentinian writer called Coppi.
Right. Was that in 94?
Are you asking yourself, Jackie? You're just
I'm asking Camden.
I think it was possibly around that time, yeah.
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 Yeah. And was Richard in it? Richard Gallagher? Was he something to do with it? The Four Twins?
No.
No. What was that play we did with Richard that Richard wrote that we did outside Duke's 92? Am I going too far ahead?
No.
The Catherine the Great one.
That was Catherine the Great.
Yeah.
Empress.
Empress.
I think I was hoping to have a couple of the actresses from that here, but they haven't arrived. But yeah, Catherine the Great.
They didn't, did they? Now. Oh.
No. Unfortunately, I was hoping to have the great Philip Coslet here, and
I think she will come along, won't she? I think Philippa will come along at some point.
At some point, she might do. Depends on like internet connections and stuff like that. But it was called Empress, and it was about Catherine the Great, and it was presented for the Manchester Festival in '93, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the costumes were brilliant for that one.
And who designed it?
I went all out with it.
And I'm going to throw one in, I think around that time, 93, 94. Bush, you might remember anybody, the ITM Manchester.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Anyone else remember that one? This is like,
no.
What do you remember from back in the day?
I was long gone by then.
Long gone by then, okay. Bush remembers.
Yeah.
That would have had quite a lot of local talent, or not happening. You were Camden. Camden's now going. Just at the moment, I'm talking about Manchester.
Going for a piss, I think.
He's going for a piss. That's right. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, Camden.
Yeah, he's going for a piss and he can see it.
Bush, was that around 93, 94, 92, 90 something? ITM came to Manchester. I co-organised it with Tamsin and several other people. And it would have had a lot of exposure for what was then going on in Manchester, because that's the whole point of the ITM, that you know them what's going on in your own city, wasn't it? So Rikki, have you got any evidence in your archive? Can't hear you, love.
Of what? I didn't hear the last bit.
The IETM conference in Manchester.
We think in
1990, early something. That's when you would know what was going on in Manchester, because it would have been pretty much anybody performing at that time.
What does ITM stand for?
At that time, it was the Informal European theatre meeting. It's changed now, but it hopped about from country to country, city to city, and the whole point was that you saw far too many shows in far too short a space of time, trying to have meetings in between, selling your wares at the same time, but each city would put up its product, whatever it had on offer. So I think that's when most of what was happening in Manchester at that time would have been shown. Would have shown. Rikki, archive? Yes,
I can remember this, but I think I'd left. I don't think I was around by then.
I think
that would be good to find. Tamsin, maybe.
Camden, I think you brought it up, the Manchester Festival. What was he called? Phil Jones, was it?
Phil Jones, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was a major player in that.
Oh, I knew Phil Jones really well.
I mean, he was a major player.
Yeah.
I know Phil Jones.
Yeah.
No, I remember Phil Jones. Yeah.
He does the food and drink festival now, doesn't he?
He put the festival on, and he gave us the gigs to do Midsummer Night's Dream and The Tempest.
Yeah, exactly.
Jackie designed Tempest, and then the play that Jackie was talking about, Empress, was the Catherine I play. And
he seemed to play that balance quite well.
He built a special venue for us to perform that play. Because a certain guy who was running the green room wouldn't let us do it there.
Yeah, won't go
mentioning the names.
Obviously not up to snuff, not radical enough. But I think he balanced that. I think Phil, not that he's my best friend or anything like that, but I think he balanced that quite well between, giving local an opportunity, but at the same time, playing the festival thing of bringing big names and stuff like that in. He seemed to get that quite well.
Did you say the B word, Tim?
I said bathroom.
I thought I heard Branner.
Yeah, I said the B word. But then, don't forget, I was a poor, benighted, forced to dwell in London, divorced from the city of my youth. I could only read in the newspapers and think, oh, to be there, how exciting.
What a wonderful place, yeah.
Can I just ask, is anybody on the screen actually born in Manchester? No.
No.
Okay.
Can I throw in a highlight, Camden, which was the cast of a fundraiser for the Green Room, was the cast of Coronation Street doing what they wanted to do. It was a fucking great evening.
I missed that, unfortunately.
Oh, it was amazing.
Have you got a film of it?
I don't think we have. I've got the program, and I remember giving Bet Lynch a hug in the bar. That was one of the highlights of my 9 years in Manchester.
Any sexually partisan establishment in Manchester in those days, like Bet Lynch. It was a freer, more innocent time.
Yeah, but again, another example of the time, I think, Camden, of where that was somehow that was possible.
I'm eating now.
There's your dad.
Hi, everyone.
Let's have the whole family. So just in sort of like, sorry, Manchester fashion theatre, I've got the whole bloody generation here. Granddad, dad, and grandchild. Keep it together, keep it in the family.
What are you doing up?
Yeah, what are you doing up?
Yeah. Well,
What?
I'm eating my pizza.
Without teeth.
yeah, with no teeth.
No.
And your son just made some lovely pasta that I've had. It was gorgeous. Right, sorry, back to theatre.
About bottle of wine.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to exit stage right because I've got a dependent retired greyhound that needs to defecate.
Greyhound.
That definitely makes you a hero.
Thank you.
Whatever anyone has said about gatekeeping, that makes you a hero if you're exiting stage right.
Okay.
Stage
At
right.
least as far as banter is concerned.
Nice.
Bush.
Yes,
Bush.
mate.
Just the nostalgia question. What are you nostalgic about?
Oh my
About those
God.
days
Oh my
of the
God.
Manchester Fringe Theatre that you loved so much?
I, from a personal point of view, I'm really nostalgic for sitting there with the audience stamping their feet in that special green room way to create the rumble, going crazy for what they've just seen and kind of gone, oh, I helped to make that happen. I get very few moments like that since, to be honest with you. And some of my highlights, if you want quickly, one was the Ukrainian group who came from near Chernobyl, and they made a piece about Chernobyl, and they kind of taped up all downstairs and the ducts, remember the air conditioning ducts?
Yeah, I saw that piece.
Yeah, and when the trains went over and the green room rumble, they all stopped, and the context of where they were coming from and the site specificity of the green room under the was just another moment that I'll treasure.
Yeah, they really used the space really well, didn't they?
Blue Man Group at the end with the toilet paper and the strobe and the
toilet paper, best ever moment ever.
Unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Watching John Cooper Clarke from the waist up, because the audience was standing, it was in, when the green room would flip into its music format, it'd be like a rock stage, and seeing the top half of John Cooper Clarke doing poetry in the gig, in the venue I was looking after, like a rock gig. I was just like, oh man, this is unbelievable. So those are, so I'm treasured moments. As I said before, I feel like blessed, a privilege to have been able to be there at that time in that city. But it must have been what it was like in Liverpool in the 60s, I think. Going to after work, lots of my thinking happened in the hacienda, not under any kind of drug use, but it was somewhere where I had no children. There was nobody asking me any questions. So I had this little spot that I had in the corner, and I would just nod away to myself for hours, where 1,000 people were going up on ecstasy, and the Stone Roses would walk by, or the Happy Mondays would come by, or what was Ginger called? What's he called with the ginger hair? Mick Hucknall.
Yeah.
And all these people were just wandering about, and I was nodding away in the corner, figuring out all the questions that the green room was posing me. I mean, amazing time. Amazing time.
I was doing the same, but kind of working out how we were going to do the next show.
Good space, wasn't it, for doing that?
Thanks, Bosch. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was, actually. Everybody was very happy.
I think it was one of the first times...
you weren't in there.
One of the first times I'd experienced a kind of nightclub scenario that wasn't about picking up a sexual partner.
No, it was just about...
Did not have the energy in the space at all.
He chilled.
It was a special time, guys. Thanks for letting me join. And nice to meet you.
Thank you for coming,
and
Bush.
Lovely to see your faces again. Bye.
See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Tomorrow I'm doing Step Up. Rikki, Camden, one thing I just thought of that might be worth going, but it's going back a few years, is all the stuff at the Hacienda that we did.
Yeah.
which might be worth at
Yeah.
some point. But
Yeah.
back into the sort
Do you
of.
want to talk about that? Do you want to talk about
Well,
that?
it can be another time. It's just that I suddenly remembered that there was stuff that came off the green room and things with Tony Wilson being a member of the board of the green room, and therefore drawing on green room artists, and therefore work was happening that we were doing, and I don't know who else, but that was performance work
Yeah.
at the hacienda.
Well, I remember going in there and talking to a guy. I can't remember his name now, but he was working for the hacienda. He was talking about doing a show in there, but it never actually happened.
Well, we did a thing called Off the Rails. That was not at the hacienda, but it came out of Flows, and that was.
And I've got loads of information on that.
Another time, then.
I've got loads of stuff on that. Yeah.
Next time.
So we ought to get into that. Jackie would be interested in that, wouldn't you, Jackie?
Yeah, well, yeah, because all those one-off events I did with John Mansell, they all sort of intersect with all this stuff that was going on in terms of energy and the people as well. And actually, I was reminded the other day, Paul Koff Video Diaries, the film. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I saw. There's a fancy dress scene, and when I was working in the Cornerhouse Bar, they put up a poster to say extras wanted for the fancy dress scene of Paul Koff Video Diaries. So, like, I'm sure Lorraine and Karen and I know Ian Latchford came, and a whole load of us went, and I took like a load of costumes and a load of people. And I've got a really great still of Ian Latchford in the background when there's this really dramatic scene with Paul Koff dressed as a policeman about to pick a fight with this big devil, and then in between their heads is Ian Latchford, like really like acting his head off. There's it's brilliant actually. So that's just one example. There's lots of different things that happened. That it'd be quite nice to sort of pull those together. And I've got loads of photos as well because I always had somebody take photographs of all these events. So at some point, it'd be good to share them.
That'd be great, Jackie.
I mean, the Catherine the Great one, we did this thing on the. Do you remember that outside Manto? There was a fashion show on top of a barge. This is with Bill Campbell. I'm sure Bill Campbell had something to do with it. And like we used the Catherine the Great costumes for that, and we had hairdressers from Vidal Sassoon and Alan Waterman did the makeup. And all these people have gone on to do really like interesting things all over the place. So just like at that moment, there's a lot of creative stuff going on, and then people carried on doing it, but like sort of split a bit. So it's really nice to think of bringing it back together, just to see people's take on it now. It's really informative stuff.
Jackie, when was this thing at Manchos with the
Well, it must, if Empress was in 93, it must have been around that time because I used the costumes from it. It must have been fairly soon after that, I'd say.
Did you just say Bill Campbell?
Yeah, I'm sure Bill had something to do with it.
Already then?
Because he used to knock about with William Baker, who went on to be Kylie Minogue's stylist. But I used to make William Baker's Madonna costumes because I went to Hollings, the toast rack, at the time that William Baker was at the boys' William Hume Grammar School behind the toast rack, and he used to come to meet me at college in his dinner hour, and I used to fit his Madonna costumes on him. So there's all these like things going on, and Bill and William were really good mates because they were knocking about together in town at the time. That was like pre-Islington Mill days.
Yeah, it would have been pre, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover to live art.
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's something else, Camden, that might be worth just bringing into it. I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, whether we can delineate the theatre to that extent, because actually we also were doing a lot of moving into the live art territory, back and forth.
Yeah.
Sort of
Expanding into
feed
that.
into each other, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, that's what, you know, I thought that we were trying to do with raw material. We were we were trying to do live art, but with acting in it, you know.
I love that. We were trying to do live art with acting in it.
Yeah.
What a sentence.
So,
I mean, seriously.
so it's still, there's
Camden
still some
McDonald,
acting,
we were trying to do
but
live art
we're pushing
with
it.
acting in it.
We're pushing it into the live art area, and we're having, you know, crazy stuff going on.
Mission
The live art
statement.
with the
Because we
crazy
had scenes. No, Tim.
Sorry, I'll just.
Tim can tell you. Tim can tell you. We had scenes where there were kind of little bits of script and little bits of things going on here and there, but it was really just a live art thing. There was no script. There was no, you know, it was just things happening quite randomly.
It is theatre without script becomes live art, doesn't it?
Not right now. Yeah.
Rikki loved it.
Or you've got devised theatre on the way to. You've got the scripted theatre, the devised theatre, and then you leave the words out and it becomes live art. And then
Yeah, like when you,
yeah,
when you did that theatre show where you just tap danced and dressed up as a baby, Rebecca.
I know. Is it live art?
The thing is, I've got some pictures of that. Also, some great ones of you dressed up as a baby.
He was absolutely anti the word. It has to be visual. Rivca was, no, it has to be the dance. Gallagher writing these fabulous epigrammatic sentences, and somehow it's all, you know, everybody says, oh, has to be the visual, has to be the dance, has to be the word. Visual, dance, word, dance, visual, word. Somehow it happened.
So I think that we should redo movie with modern technology.
We look younger, please. Or are we going to do old age babies now?
No, I think we should do it.
Can I be in it?
Do it a bit further down the line. There was actually a
I
film.
mean, the makeup will just run down even quicker than it did then, didn't it?
Is there a part for me in it?
Of course.
Yes,
Of course.
there's not for everyone. Because
We will create one. We will create one.
Yeah,
We will create one.
that's what we did in those days. We'll just write a part for you.
Yeah.
There's a part in it for you, Luna, as well.
Michael, your sound is really bad, and we can't really hear what you're saying. So I don't know if you can do anything about that.
It doesn't really matter. I'm wondering about the costumes for the new multimedia version of movie. That's all I.
Okay, I'll organise it.
I'm in it. I'll happily in it. Michael,
I'm serious.
is there any way you could get a better sound for next time so we can really hear you?
Yeah, okay.
It'd be great because I'm missing about 30% of what you're saying, and I'd love to hear what you're saying.
But it could be, love, that you need a hearing aid.
Fuck off, Rikki. Fuck off.
Rivca Rubin. Finally, what? I have to wait 30 years to hear you say that.
What? Fuck off, Rikki?
No. To hear you say, Michael, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah, I am old and I've learned a lot, haven't I? In that time. It's more than 30 years, love. More than 30. It's a lifetime of learning.
I'm only 42. It can't be. This is a wig.
pretty good. Pretty good week.
We're doing well. We're doing well. We're here.
Rivka, I think
Yes, Jackie.
I think what happened at the Manto Barge was it was a fashion show and Bill had some of his clothes in as well. I think that's what was.
It's just amazing to hear you say that, because now I work with Bill.
Yeah, no, yeah.
You know, so to have that connection, I never ever thought. I mean, that's just like, oh, what a lovely what a lovely thing to have that, to have the world even that early on.
Yeah.
I met Bill about 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay, right.
And then Rachel.
Yeah.
So, that's just that's nice. Yeah. I'll share that.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't seem that long ago. That's the thing as well.
No, it's a bit scary.
No, it really doesn't. Yeah. But...
Jackie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm playing, but in the multimedia version of Movie, my clothes.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, we're going to do
made
it.
out of sticky back plastic.
So Tim and Jackie are doing the new version costumes. Ricky's going to create characters for everyone.
I am.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
We're still going to have this run around the screen.
No, we don't have to do that anymore.
No, good.
It'll all become easier.
Good. That was really hard work.
Yeah.
Who else is in it? Is Bill in it?
Yeah, I'll see if I can get Bill.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I'll see if I can find Bill. I'll see if I can find Bill.
Are we all going to be in the same room, or can we all be avatars?
No, we're going to do a show.
We are actually in the same room live.
Yeah, it's going to be live.
Lovely, marvelous. Oh, I can't wait.
And super surreal. Super surreal.
Yeah, yeah. Can we
should have it in gorilla?
It's called Movie and it's black and white. What are you doing with it? You're already butchering this idea.
No, it'll be great.
Where was it originally on at?
Huh?
Where was the original venue for it? Movie.
The first one, I don't know. Abraham Moss maybe, or Adrian Mealing, Barry Metro Arts.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We did there, and we did the Abraham Moss Centre, and we did where was it? Manchester School of Theatre in their venue.
Where I saw it.
The Horniman Theatre, it was called, wasn't it?
The Capitol Building.
I don't know what it's fucking called. I've forgotten.
Tim, what was your Tim surname at that time, Tim?
I was Tim Donnelly in those days.
Yes, that's what. I'm just putting the pieces together.
I remember Tim Donnelly really well. Very well.
You can't relate to this 56-year-old with the snowy hair.
No, I can. Yeah, I can completely relate. I can hear it. I can hear certain things in your voice.
You're so young.
Who is?
The last time I saw you, Rikki, was in a pub called the Cutfield in at the end of the Central Line, Snaresbrook, about 26 years ago.
What was I doing there? I can't remember.
Somewhere nearby and
start inviting Steve Purcell into this a little bit. Sorry, I'm coming in here. I'm going to talk over everybody.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. Camden's gone.
Feel free.
Camden's son Luke is going to do a stand-in. Go on.
Hi, Luke.
Hi, Luke.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Luke.
Hi.
Hi, Luke.
What questions do you have?
You're the one that gives the questions.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You really sound like him.
Right. How does it feel having people think your dad is Jack Nicholson?
What was everyone's favourite play at the time from the Green Room? What was everyone's favourite?
Oh, I know exactly what this is because he talked about it at great length. It In English, its title is Holly, Ash and Rowan, which is it's a Flemish play written in the 15th century by Dirk van der Kees, Keese, and he was obsessed with it.
Okay.
It hadn't been done in 400 years, but he was obsessed with it.
I think for me it was the toilet paper moment with Blue Man Group.
Did you get Blue Man?
Pushed it, yeah, before they became famous.
Okay.
I remember a show at the RNTM by, I think it was Complicité, maybe it was not, but I remember a show called Rococo at the RNTM.
Yeah.
That was Circus Lumiere, directed by Hilary Westlake, who ended up working for Disney. She ended up directing stuff for Disneyland, a bit like the sort of stuff I had to do at the Eden Project, which was a bit Disney-like.
I saw do you know a company called Creative Cow?
I've heard of them. I haven't seen them. Yeah, I've heard of them.
They brought to London, to the Rosemary branch, about 5-6 years ago. They brought this production of The Rivals by Sheridan. And looked at the design and I thought, my God, this is like going back 30 years. This is because they couldn't afford to do restoration costumes. So they did that, hoops and wires and a bit of fabric. And I thought, this is like seeing Rococo again. Everything comes out.
Yeah, he might have issues.
So it's Camden, you, me, and everybody else who wants to do it, as long as you sanction it.
Richard and Tim.
Richard and Tim. Okay.
I won't do it without Rivca.
The costumes. What did you say, Tim?
I won't do it without you.
I'll follow. Oh, and Camden could direct it, couldn't he? Because he really hates direct.
No, I protect my actors from directors. That's how I direct.
Camden will have to be in it, but he'll have to have a wig that stands up this time because his hair was fantastic.
Can I be the police person again, please?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'll do that well. I'll do the police person well.
Okay.
How about if Camden and I play co-joined twins who are he's always trying to steal my hair?
That's a great idea. That's even better.
Right, good night, everyone.
Have to go.
Good night.
See you all soon.
Camden, do you want to wave?
See you all soon. See you all soon.
He's nearly there. Look at him. Look at him. Coming out. Face coming out. Good night, everybody.
We'll speak on the next one.
Yeah. And also, at that angle, you look really like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. No, that's Robert Newton in Treasure Island.
I'm going to end this recording right here. That's the end of the recording.
What, before I embarrass myself? Thank you very much. Although...
hang on a minute.
Talking about The Godfather, there is a story you will not know, which you will love. Let me just end with this little anecdote about the film of The Godfather.
Okay, yeah, do that.
So, in late '69, when they're putting it together, word comes down from Mount Paramount that the powers that be are interested in considering Shelley Winters for the role of Mama Corleone. Now, and would Miss Winters like to come and audition? Now,
Shelley Winters is never a bad choice for a part. Yeah.
Has not done an audition for 30 years at this point.
If you want Shelley Winters, you know you want Shelley Winters. You know, come on.
She's no intention of resuscitating the process. However, she agrees that she will go to a meeting, which means pushing some lettuce around on a plate in the Brown Derby. Fine, done deal. 12 o'clock, 26th of July, 1968, Brown Derby. Everybody's there. Robert Evans, Coppola, and 5 suits from Paramount. 12:30 comes and goes. 12:45 arrives. In sweeps Ms. Winters with her scarves and her bags and her everything. Oh, hello, gentlemen. Okay. She dumps the bag on the table, and out of it she produces. This is the Best Supporting Actress Oscar I got in 1942 for A Place in the Sun. This is my Best Actress Oscar I got in 1962 for Lolita. Picks them back up, puts them back in the bag, says, gentlemen, I think we're done. And off she goes. She didn't get the job, but I think it's a great audition.